All right, welcome back. All right, what are we going to do next? Well, we just learned how to log in. How about we learn how to log out, right? For every login, there's going to be a log out at some point. So what we would want to do is create some kind of action or some kind of button on the home screen that allows us to log out and go back to the login screen. So how do we do that? Well, before we do that, we're going to do some personalization here because there's a few things here that I don't like. By the way, you'll notice here when I select the home screen, remember to mostly ignore this one here. It's not really going to be useful unless, except for things like customizing the bar. I'll show you that in a second here. But most of the time, we'll be working on this one right here. There's a few things I don't like about this. Also, I don't like that it's showing me the code here. I don't really care about this code for now. So I'm gonna get back to the single view controller or standard editor, I think it's called. And then I'm gonna zoom in on this home controller. Right now it's called root view controller. What does that mean, right? I can double click on that and I can type a new name. I can also, while this screen is selected, go under the not the screen, the bar itself. When the bar is selected, go under that downward arrow, the attribute inspector, and I can also type a new name here. I want this to say home. Okay, perfect. That makes more sense than root view controller. Well, we're building an app that we want it to look kind of like Twitter. So how about we also change the color of the bar here? Let's do that. Let's change that bar, that navigation bar, to be kind of like a Twitter bar, right? All right. You're not going to be able to click on this bar right here and change the color. As you can see, I don't have the option. So what you'd want to do is click on this bar here in this weird navigation controller screen that we dragged earlier. So click on that, and then you'll see that you have access to a bunch of options here. So you would think that you should go and change the background, but actually what you want to change is the bar tint right there. So I'm going to click on that. And if it's a color that you used recently, like setting up the login button, for example, then you'll see that your color shows up there in the recently used colors. So I'm going to click on that, and boom, now my bar has changed to something blue. I'm going to select that bar again, and I'm also going to change the text to be, instead of black, I want it to be white. So I think it's under title color, white. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so now let's talk about our logout button. Where I would want our logout button to also be in the bar here. So how about somewhere on the left here, right? So I'm going to click on my library, and I'm going to look again for a button. Because we're adding the button to a bar, we need a special button that's called a bar button item. Okay, so I'm going to select that. I'm going to drag it here. Boom. All right, so now I have my bar button item. I'm going to change its tint to white. And then I'm going to change the title to say Logout. Perfect. All right. So now that's a button, right? If I were to run this, I would see my blue bar that looks kind of like Twitter. I would also see my Logout button, but actually it doesn't do much, right? So log in, authorize, open Twitter, boom, I'm on my page. But then nothing really happens, right? Because we haven't linked this thing to any kind of code. We actually haven't linked the page itself to any kind of code yet. So let's do that. Hopefully you remember how we did it for the home screen. So I'm going to bring this left panel back by clicking this icon right here. So right click on Twitter and then add a new file. And then you want it to be a Cocoa Touch file, of course. And then here, we're going to do something different. So earlier, what we did to create the login button, we created a new class or a new file that was of type view controller. For the home screen, because of how we dragged it there, because of how we created it, I want you to create something called a table view controller. So I'm going to call it home table view controller. Okay. And then under the subclass of, this could also say type, what kind of class this is, what kind of a file this is. It's going to be a UI table view controller. All right, so make sure this is unchecked. Make sure your language says Swift, and then next. And then again, it's going to ask you where do you want to save it. You always want to save it there. So create. The reason why you're creating specific types of these things or these screens, I'm sorry, these file, is because you can only tie a screen to the file of the same type. So in this case, our home screen here, this specific part right here happens to be a table view, right? So now that I've created my home table view controller, I can go back to my main storyboard, click on this yellow dot again, and then click on the driver's license and say, okay, I'm going to give you your identity. Your identity is now linked to the home table view controller. Enter. There you go. So now, if you've done that correctly, again, I'm going to collapse that left side to give us some space. And then you clicked on the assistant editor. You'll see that now, anytime I select this home screen, I see the home code right here. If I were to scroll down here and click on the login screen, then I have my login code. All right. So click here. Okay, we are right now on our home controller. You can ignore most of these. We won't be using any of that. So hopefully it doesn't kind of scare you away. You could even delete this for now. It's not something we'll need for now. So go ahead and get rid of that. I'm also going to get rid of this. All right, so what do we want to do here? We want to create an action for our logout button so that when somebody clicks on it, it doesn't just do nothing, or it doesn't just say print, or I'm sorry, it doesn't just print logout. We actually want some kind of action. So again, I'm going to select my button, hold Control, and then I'm going to make sure to drag it. Make sure to drag it not inside of any of these things. You want to drag it outside of one of these brackets. So somewhere in between here, here, or somewhere here. I'm just going to drag mine down here. Let go. And then I'm going to call this on log out. All right. Make sure again that it's an action. Remember, an action means that when I click on this button, something will happen. Will happen. If I were to select an outlet, it means that when something else happens, this button will either change color or change something. So this is an action. So click action and then connect. There you go. So now anything I have in here will happen when I click the logout button. What do we want to happen? Well, we've created in our API caller file that I showed you at the very beginning, we've created a function that knows how to call the Twitter API to log out. So how do we do that? How do we actually use it? Well, you type Twitter client or Twitter API caller, enter, and then dot client, okay, and then dot, there should be a function here called log out right there, then enter. And that's it. So right now you're calling the correct function or the correct method in our API caller that we created for you early here, remember? That has the correct calls to log out. So that's it. Now we have a logout button. I'm going to press play to test it. So that's going to open my app. I'm going to have my launch screen first, and then my login button. And then I'm going to click login, and then I'm going to go through the login process, and then authorize, and then open, yes. And now I end up on the page here, which doesn't have anything yet, right? But if I were to click on the logout button, look what happened. It logs out. It logs out in the background, but it actually doesn't do anything on the screen. What do we want it to do? Well, we want it to send us back to the home screen. If somebody logs out, we don't just call the API, we also want to execute some kind of transition, or we want to cancel that first transition that we ran to come to the home screen. We want to kind of reverse out of that to go back to our home, to our login screen. How do we do that? Well, pretty simple. Right under the logout call that we did to the API, what you want to do is say self dot dismiss right there. Self dismiss means I'm going to dismiss myself, as in the screen will dismiss itself. So when you called the login, it was brought in, it was presented. Now it's there, you're working and you're looking at your tweets. Once you log out, you want that view to dismiss itself and to disappear, basically. So self-dismiss, animated, you either write yes or true or false. In this case, I'm just going to say true because I want it to be animated. And then for completion, we don't want to do anything, so I'm just going to say nil. As in, we don't want anything to happen once it's gone. All right, so should we try again? Launch. All right, launch screen, login button, click on the login button. There you go, authorize app. All right, open, boom, we are logged in. When I click log out, boom, it dismisses, we're logged out, and now we're back on the login screen. There you go. Now you've built a login and logout. But there's an issue though. Did you notice how every single time we start the app, we have to log in over and over again? So I'm gonna open the app and log in, and then I'm gonna, authorize my app, and now I can open, I'm in the app. But if I were to close the app without logging out, actually closing the app without logging out and reopening it, it sends me back to the login screen. I want my app to remember that I'm already logged in, that I haven't logged out. So we have to write some kind of way that allows the app to remember our credentials. And that's what we'll do next.